War Champion is in the building today, and today we're going to discuss the top 10 annoying enemies who felt were in the game of Legends of Kingdom Rush, and I have a special guest with me. It's Voduke, folks, a very good player, and is here to break down and share his analysis on the top 10 enemies that we felt were worthy to be in this top 10 list for Legends of Kingdom Rush. See, when Ironheart created this game, it created a shift in the dynamics of gameplay. As you're used to setting up archers, barracks, and artillery and mage towers and such, this time it's like more of like a game of chess in this game. You have to know the strengths and weaknesses of your heroes and position them in the best places possible in order to play as efficiently. But it also helped it when you knew the strengths and weaknesses of the enemies. In this game, it's quite a lot of familiar enemies from the original Kingdom Rush, and they took some of those enemies and put them in the game of Legends of Kingdom Rush. So which ones did we rank on the top 10 list? Well, the only way to find that out is watch this video, folks. This is our top 10 annoying enemies list for Legends of Kingdom Rush. All right, number 10 on the list. We have gone with the Skeleton Knight. Skeleton Knight stats are hit points 5, physical attack damage 3 to 5, armor 3, movement speed is 2 hex spaces. Special ability, they possess the shield bash where they stun a soldier for 1 turn, preventing them from making any movement, and also the damage dealt upon using this move is 3. They also possess life restoration ability where they're able to, basically after being killed, or shall I say knocked down, they possess the ability to come back to life and reanimate with only 1 hit point. So in other words, upon initial knockdown, or as I said, kill, but it's initially knocked down technically, if you fail to get rid of enemies 2 turns after you initially knocked it down, he'll reanimate back to life. So it's a turn that's bypassed. After 1 turn is bypassed, and then if you don't get rid of enemies after his bypass turn, by the time of his next turn, he comes back to life with 1 hit point. And then he's also immune to bleeding and poison damage. So that makes sense considering that he's a skeleton type enemy. You would expect that. So this enemy, for sure, it's an enemy that, in my opinion, I've had a little trouble with it, especially early on. That shield bash ability of stunning the soldiers in general, no matter what enemy does or how they do it. Any stun soldiers where their turn is bypassed is very frustrating to deal with in this game of Legends of Kingdom Rush. You know, as it's a nasty thorn in your strategy. Maybe you're relying on a hero to get rid of other enemies, or to do a lot of it's a heroes that you think are going to be very helpful early on to get rid of hordes of other enemies and make the gameplay a lot easier. And if they're stunned, they become a non-factor. That's what that ability that it possesses. It forces you to have to be leery of its whereabouts on the battlefield. Also, the life restoration capability that it possesses, that's annoying as well, because it forces you to have a very aggressive offensive approach with dealing with all the hordes of enemies on the battlefield. And it really forces you to make sure that you get rid of them pronto. Otherwise, should you not, and this enemy happens to still be down on the ground, down for the count, you have to remember he's down but not out. So he'll rise back up, and then you have to do extra work to get rid of him from the battlefield. So for sure, he's like a roach. He's like a big daddy roach. You step on him, you think you got him killed, but they're still very much alive. So that's why I agree with Voduke. We ranked him at number 10 on the list. Let's hear it from Voduke, by the way.
Skeleton Knights are bullies, but rather than taking your lunch money or your self-esteem, they take away your turn. Every Skeleton Knight's first priority is to use Shield Bash, so they can stun a unit for 1 turn. This skill only has a 2-turn cooldown, one of those turns being the time that your unit spends stunned. During that turn, the Skeleton Knight can use its normal attack freely, and it won't unstun the unit. Only sleep gets removed if the unit is attacked, but stun is maintained even if the unit gets hurt. But anyways, the Skeleton Knight in groups can completely rob your units of the ability to fight back. You have to go out of your way to avoid them, or suffer a heavy cost. They get more dangerous the more enemies are present alongside them. These stuns give enemies the freedom to do all of their nasty stuff, which can lead to everything going wrong really fast. However, they are only the 10th worst enemy because they are strictly melee units who only have 2 movement per turn. They're easy to avoid, and if you have sufficient control over the situation, they won't feel like much of a threat at all. But when the going gets tough, The combination of back-to-back stuns and the fact that they can revive once after being slain makes them an enemy worth keeping an eye on at all times.
All right, thank you for that breakdown there. Moving right along, number 9 on the list, we have chosen the Shaman. The Shaman from the Grass Plains, folks, the Shaman. His stats are as follows: hit points 3, ranged magic attack damage 2 to 4, armor none, speed, they move 2 hex spaces at max. Special ability, they possess the Shamanic Bolt. That's basically its ranged magic attack. Can attack a target from away by 3 hex radius spaces. And also, it being called a shaman, it possesses the ability to heal. It heals its allies, an ally 4 hex radiuses away from itself, and it can restore that single ally's hit points by a maximum of up to 6 hit points. So ranged heroes in general are never fun, in my opinion, to deal with. I mean, you battle head to head melee combat, and then you got to worry about a unit hacking from the outskirts on you. But what's interesting about the Shaman, it deals magic damage. So if you have a lot of heroes that have a lot of armor, they can bypass that armor, that's going to reduce the health of your unit, not necessarily the armor. So you have to keep that in the back of your mind with the Shaman. And plus, the Shaman, with it being not a very powerful enemy, the game can spawn more than one of these Shamans, considering they're not super powerful, maybe like a troll breaker or such. So, and then not only that, it has that nauseating ability of healing allies, so that's no fun. You're tanking like an ogre or a warg or an orc champion or such. If you got Shamans in the picture and they're healing their brethren, that just creates extra work. And this enemy, it can really just complicate things and make the adventure all the more frustrating to deal with, which is why we in Voduke agreed that it was deemed to be number 9 on the list. Let's hear from Voduke.
Most ranged magic enemies are tricky to deal with. Having 2 movement and 3 range is nothing special on its own, and dealing 1 to 3 magic damage per attack also isn't very special. You should never try to tank their attacks because they bypass armor, but that's true of all magic enemies. But what makes the Shaman so troublesome is the fact that they can heal other units. Yes, there are other sources of healing, like the obelisks, but those only appear when your units are high enough level to deal with that more effectively. If you get a Shaman, Krumthak's Dominion makes it all the more meaningful because you have less experience points and less of other rewards in that adventure overall. So, healing units by up to 6 HP can set you back by more than 1 turn's worth of progress sometimes. Against tough enemies like ogres and orc champions, this can buy them the time they need to deal a huge amount of damage just when you thought that you had the enemy cornered. On their own, Shamans are just tricky, but because of the conditions of their fights and sometimes appearing in high numbers, you have to go out of your way to make them a priority, or else they're going to deal armor-piercing range damage to your units, all while keeping stronger enemies alive. That's what makes them the 9th most troublesome enemy in Legends of Kingdom Rush.
All right, moving right along, number 8 on the list is the Spider Matriarch. Yeah, so Spider Matriarch, hit points 10, physical attack damage 2 to 4, ranged magic attack damage 2 to 4, armor none, their speed, movement is 2 hex spaces, special ability, they possess both its melee and its ranged attack poisons its victims. Also has this ability called Mother Load, where it launches a sack of eggs that deals a damage of 3 and summons 1 to 2 spider hatchlings in adjacent hexes. Also, upon its death, it leaves behind a pool of acid on the ground for 2 turns. And also, I know that the watermark is kind of blocking, so it might be hard to see, but it says immune to freezing. Interestingly, maybe I may have had that wrong, but I think that's what I remember from the website. I'm surprised it wasn't poison, but it's apparently immune to freezing, which is pretty interesting there. So, and that's not, to me, that's really not a ability that really makes it quite annoying. But yeah, this enemy for sure is a top 10 in my opinion as well, because it's durable. 10 hit points is pretty. Yeah, that takes a while to get rid of. It's not just so straightforward to. You gotta actually whittle his hit points down. You're not getting rid of that in 1 hit. probably with the exception of one particular attack. Also, it's that ability that no matter what it does, a physical or ranged attack, I think that's what it is. It does a pretty decent amount of damage, but it's the fact that it poisons the victim. So you got a lingering, and it does true damage. So it's you got a lingering poison damage plus an initial damage that's done to your unit, and that alone is enough to cause you some trouble, and you have to be very leery of it and make sure you're not too close or not too far away from it in combat. That other ability of the Motherlode launching the sacks, that creates extra work for you, so that's no fun because you got other units on the spiders itself can also poison units too with their attacks, so you have to be very cautious of that as well. And then the fact that they leave behind a pool of acid on the ground for 2 turns, that is a problem as well, making it very annoying because that just takes away parts of the battlefield, causing you to have to micro your units around that acid so that they don't get harmed. So with that being said, for all these reasons, the spider matriarch is indeed quite annoying, if you ask me. Very indeed an annoying enemy. So let's hear from Voduke on what he has to say about this.
I mean it when I say that both of the spider enemies in this game are truly annoying. First, the normal spiders have a whopping 5 HP. As I just explained, in Krumtek's Dominion, you have less XP to work with, so your units are generally weaker. Dealing with these spiders in a quick manner is borderline impossible. But unlike many other enemies, which you can just tank when they don't die right away, the spiders deal poison damage. This is true damage, and it lasts for multiple turns, which means that you're guaranteed to lose multiple hit points on your units just for tanking them. But you have no choice but to tank them, because the combat encounters they give you force you to deal with many of them at once. It's even more unlikely for you to deal with them quickly enough to avoid this. They also leave a pile of poison on the ground after dying, so the battle still maintains difficulty even as you thin their numbers out. Now, imagine that enemy with even more HP, a ranged attack, and higher damage. That's what makes the Spider Matriarch take the place on this list. But to be honest, both spiders might as well be here as a tie, because they are truly annoying enemies. There's only one clip that captures my hatred for the spiders in this series.
Oh, folks, that was funny there. Those spiders, that SpongeBob scenery never always stays across my mind at times, folks. All right, all right, folks. Moving right along, number 7 on the list. We have gone with the Demon Hound. The Demon Hound. Yeah, folks. So quite another durable enemy. Hit points 8, physical attack damage 2 to 4, no armor. Speed, they move 3 hex spaces. The special ability, they have a Blaze Bite ability where this is their physical attack that it deals 2 to 4 damage, and then physical damage, and then it also inflicts a burn, lingering burn that deals 1 damage, and it lingers for 2 turns. Also, they have the Infernal Combustion Sacrifice, where they basically get near a target and then they sacrifice themselves by doing self-destruction, dealing 5 physical damage to all adjacent units. Annoyingly, just like all the K9 enemies, I believe with the exception of the wolf, but they can dodge melee attacks, 30% chance of doing that. And also with it being a fire type dog, it's able, fire type enemy, it's immune to burning. So yeah, the Demon Hound for sure is a top 10 enemy, and I agree with we were agreement with Voduke on this one. Just the fact that it's quite a durable enemy. It's that ability that moves quite a few hex spaces, 3 hex spaces. So you have to be real leery of that as well, that it can move that many hex spaces. And then on top of that, that Blaze Bite attack, it does that burning damage that lasts for certain turns. It's just an attack. It's similar to that Spider Matriarch, where it does that attack, and then you have a lingering a lingering burn that lasts for extra turns. That's enough to weaken your heroes and whittle them down and make them easy prey for other enemies. And then if they don't resort to doing that, their last resort could be the infernal combustion, where they explode and deal massive damage of 5 near adjacent units. And you also have to keep that in mind. So this demon hound has a lot of options. If blaze bite or infernal combustion, it's depending on the way the AI uses the demonic type enemy. They can use the infernal combustion if they want to. Also, it's the annoying thing of the dodging of the melee attack. So every time you attack it in melee combat, you're rolling the dice, and that's no fun because you want your hits to all be guaranteed, and you want to get the enemies out of the building and not mess around with it. But if it's dodging melee attacks, that's going to that can really foil your plan if you roll the dice and you get unlucky and you don't end up killing it off pronto. So for all those reasons, the demon hound, with all these other abilities that it possesses, that makes it quite annoying to put up with, if you ask me. So let's hear from Voduke on behalf of this particular enemy.
The game sure did the Demon Hound justice, because the Kingdom Rush 1 version of this enemy was already a memorable one. But in Legends, this enemy is unforgettable. It has a total of 8 HP, making it take your most powerful attacks to one-shot it unless you have stat boosts. Like all dogs, they also have a chance to dodge melee attacks, making them even harder to kill with anything that isn't ranged. This is really bad, because, like spiders, their bite inflicts true damage over time, in the form of burning. So, you have a dangerous enemy who can do true damage that's hard to kill because of its high HP, and is accompanied by other dangerous demon enemies. The Demon Hound would be ranked even higher if its initial attack dealt true damage as well, but it's thankfully just physical damage. Still, they're formidable enemies that make you keep track of them on the map. Also, Bruxa provides some extra lore about the Demon Hounds by revealing that they're actually furries. No wonder they went to Pandemonium.
All right, good breakdown there. Moving right along to number 6 on the list. Number 6 on the list is the Troll Breaker. We've gone with the Troll Breaker on as our 6th enemy on the top 10 annoying list. So his stats are as follows: his hit points 15, his physical attack damage does 4 to 6, armor 3, speed is 2 hex spaces that they can move. Their HP regeneration is for their special ability, they have HP regeneration of +1 hit points regenerated at the start of their turn, like all trolls. They also deal area attack damage, and it deals normal damage of 4 to 6 in the main to the main target, and then also deals a damage of 3 to all adjacent units, or in other words, 1 hex space away from the main target. So you have to be leery of that area damage he can do. Area attack knocks all units back some hex spaces. Not sure on the total amount, but it's some hex spaces. The battery ram attack it possesses, where it basically is a certain a total of 3 hex spaces away. He can dash towards all units in a straight line path and deal physical damage of 4. And should the victim survive the attack, it's knocked back some hex spaces as well. It's called enragement. So if let's say a troll brethren of his dies adjacent to him himself, his attack strength increases by 1. And also his hit point regeneration increases by 1. So I believe that means that his hit point regeneration at the start of his turn, he'll regenerate 2 hit points instead of 1, and he'll do an additional 1 additional attack damage, bonus damage is added to his physical attack damage. So this enemy definitely, I mean, for all these reasons, he's pretty annoying. I mean, this is an enemy you see. I mean, he's big, so it grabs your attention. He's really big enemy. He just pops out to you. You see him in your peripheral, see him in your rear view. You know, he's just a big enemy. So you look for them. You look for him, and you make sure you stay far away from him as possible. And you also have to be leery of the fact that he does that. You have to be leery of that battery ram attack. So even if you are a good distance away from it, you have to be leery of that ability of him being able to charge, and then not only that, do massive damage to your units. The fact that you have to stay away from it also kind of affects things too, because you have to engage with the other troll brethrens or maybe a winter wolves out there. So certain parts of the map are kind of like, taken away from, because of the fact of this enemy's presence, and specifically that battery ram attack. And then not only that, if you do engage in melee combat and you don't kill it off, and he happens to attack with an area damage, you're going to get knocked back some hex spaces. So that's bad, because if you get knocked back some hex spaces and you get in range of another unit that happens to, you might end up, your heroes might end up knocked back to a certain distance near another troublesome enemy that could cause you some problems. And so for that particular reason, that's another thing that makes him a problem. But not enough to where we would rank him as number 1 on the top 10 list. So let's hear from Voduke on behalf of this enemy.
It's about time that one of the thick enemies appeared here, and the Troll Breaker definitely deserves a mention. His base attack deals massive damage in an AoE and knocks back units. This makes a huge difference on the kind of positioning that you can get away with your units. Obviously, it discourages putting them close together, but a more nuanced effect that it has is that your units can't use any full action melee skills against the Breaker, because he pushes them back every time they get into range. This limits the options that you have against them, which is huge because it's not easy to take a Troll Breaker down unless you're using your strongest attacks. With 15 HP, even the Arcane Wizard's Disintegrate can't one-shot them. On top of that, they heal by 1 HP per turn, have 2 armor with 1 armor regenerated per turn, and can double the healing per turn if they're enraged. But the bigger they are, the harder they fall.
I like that. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. That's a well said thing there. All right, number 5 on the list, we have chosen the Demon Lord. So the Demon Lord, hit points 12, range, magic, attack damage 3 to 4, armor 4, speed. They move 2 hex spaces. There are special abilities that they possess, quite a few of them. They have flame pitch. That's like a ranged magic attack, very similar to the FLAREON, that deals 3 to 4 damage and sets a unit on fire, causing them to receive 1 burn damage at the start of their turn. And they can attack a unit 4 hex radiuses away from itself. They also have that annoying ability that can drive you crazy, just like it would in the original Kingdom Rush, is the Nether Shield, but it's different in this game. He applies a shield around himself and all of his brethren within a 2 hex radius of himself, and it increases their armor by 4. But I believe the armor, this shield, wears off after X amount of turns. Not sure on the total amount of turns, but it can wear off after a certain amount of turns. Demon Lord's Call. So he basically has the ability to summon a demon spawn to the battlefield 2 hex radiuses away from himself. And then he also has the ability of Command Sacrifice, where he can command for a demon brethren to sacrifice itself through infernal combustion or through self-destruction. And also, him being a fire type enemy, he's immune to burning. So for sure, I loathe the Demon Lord like I do in the original Kingdom Rush, and I do loathe him in this game. He's an enemy that appears on the Extra Dimensional Menace. He appears later on in the game. So by then, your heroes should definitely be powerful enough to deal with him, which is why, because of the fact that your heroes would be more powerful enough, it's enough to like mitigate the threat that he would have on your units, considering that they'd be much stronger to deal with him. But for all these reasons, he has a ranged attack. He has the ability to bring another demon spawn to the battlefield, an extra unit that you got to get rid of. Yeah, he can command them to self-destruct. So if they get near, maybe the unit is near, maybe however the AI wants to play with this enemy. If the AI forces the Demon Lord to make a command sacrifice, and you wherever the unit is at, wherever the enemy unit is at on the battlefield, that is going to do massive damage, of total of 5 to all the units that are within 1 hex radius of it. And that's like nothing to mess around with, because you don't. you don't know what to expect when he's going to do that. And then on top of that, that annoying ability of the nether shield, which increases their armor. It just makes them all the more durable. The enemies on the battlefield all the more durable, which depending on the way you attack them with melee combat, you have to get through their armor first before you get there. You get to their hit points. That just creates extra work. And just like he was in the original Kingdom Rush, that ability is nauseating in this game, and that's enough for us to rank him at number 5 on the list. So let's hear from Voduke on this enemy.
What happens when you couple a lot of raw power with a large set of nasty skills? You get the Demon Lord, a long-range true damage attack that inflicts burning, armor buffs for enemies in a large radius, detonating enemies to deal massive area damage, and summoning new enemies into the battlefield who instantly get a turn right afterwards. This combination of skills makes the Demon Lord the closest thing so far to fighting an actual level 3 companion. That alone should speak for how powerful he is. But he also comes with the benefit of only appearing halfway through Extra-Dimensional Menace. So, you have plenty of XP and other resources at your disposal to deal with him. Plus, I've proven that it is still possible to beat the Demon Lord even without leveling up your party at all. So, despite being one of the most dangerous enemies in the entire game, he's still going to be ranked 5 instead of even higher on this list. But don't let that trick you into underestimating one of the most dangerous enemies in all of Legends of Kingdom Rush.
All right, that was well, good analysis there by Voduke. Number 4 on the list, we've gone with the Winter Wolf. Yeah, the Winter Wolf. So his stats are hit point 6, physical attack damage 2 to 4, armor none, speed 3 hex spaces they can move. Special ability called Frost Gnaw. They inflict physical damage. I believe that's right, physical damage of 1 to 3, and it freezes their victim for 1 turn. I could be wrong. Maybe it might be true damage, or this physical damage is what I recall. And they, just like the K9s, just like the Demon Hound, it can dodge melee attacks, 30% chance. So it might be interesting to see that this enemy is ranked ahead of the Demon Hound, but it's the fact that this enemy appears early on. I don't recall if the Demon Hound appears early on like the Demon Spawns and the FLAREONs, but the Winter Wolf for sure in the mountainous adventure, they appear early on. And for a good reason, this is a frustrating enemy because of the fact that, like as I mentioned before, when it attacks and he lands as a result of his physical attack, the first attack that it lands, it freezes the unit. And again, bypass turns really hurt you in the game. But it's the fact that this enemy appears early in the game, they can make the adventure just a large obstacle to get over in the beginning, because your units are all at level 1 to start off. And then the fact that he dodged, of course, him being a melee, he can dodge the melee attacks, 30% chance. You're always rolling the dice when it comes to engaging in melee combat with it. So it helps to get rid of them by hacking from the outskirts, but you never know. It's 70% chance you'll land a hit on it, but if you don't, you get unlucky, then he's still alive. You have to deal with this ability of him being able to to freeze the victim upon the first attack that it lands. So it's really frustrating to deal with this Winter Wolf. Not the most powerful enemy, not the most durable, but definitely frustrating early on. And for that reason, I believe that's a good reason why we had it ahead of the Demon Hound. Let's hear from Voduke on him.
Few things are worse than loading into a combat encounter just to find Winter Wolves there. They have a combination of all of the most evil and annoying traits an enemy could have. First, their number 1 priority is always to use their Ice Bite attack, which freezes their target, wasting their turn. Unlike Skeleton Knights, Winter Wolves have 3 movement, so it's harder to avoid them. It's also very challenging to kill them preemptively, which could be a good way of avoiding their attack if it is possible. However, the Winter Wolf can dodge melee attacks, which means that the safest way to fight them is with ranged attacks. However, they have 6 HP and can spawn even in the earliest combat encounters of the adventure. It's unlikely that you will always have the means to take them down that quickly. As a result, it's practically impossible to avoid taking damage in any combat encounter with this enemy. And this isn't just any damage. The Ice Bite deals 1 to 3 true damage. The Winter Wolf prioritizes units that haven't been frozen yet, so they will go around your other units just to deal true damage to them as well, all while freezing them too. If you encounter them later on in the adventure, when your units have had the chance to get stronger, they aren't going to be as difficult to deal with. But it's because of the frustration that they cause during the early parts of the Stormcloud's winter adventure that makes them the 4th most annoying enemy in the entire game.
All right. Number 3 on the list, we have chosen to go with the FLAREON. FLAREON. Hit points 4, ranged magic attack damage 1 to 2, armor none, speed 2 hex spaces they can move, and their special ability, just like that Demon Lord, they have the flame pitch. It's that ranged attack, attacks target 4 hex radius away, inflicts a lingering burn that deducts 1 hit point from its victim on the start of their turn. They also, just like all the demonic enemies, they have the infernal combustion, where they infernal combustion sacrifice, where they run next to the target and self-destruct, dealing a physical damage of 5 to adjacent units. And with it being a fire type enemy, it's immune to burning. Yeah, the FLAREON, for sure, we rank this really high on the list because, you know, it's an enemy that appears early on. You know, depending on the every adventure is different, but you know, if you go to the demonic the lava, one of those lava stages, you have an option in the extra dimensional menace, and maybe you go to the graveyard scenery, or maybe you go to the lava scenery. The FLAREON tends to be there early on, and with that enemy, the fact that it attacks 4 hex radius away, it's a ranged unit that can burn, that also has a burning lingering special ability, that you have to be real leery of that. That's an enemy that you look to get rid of as soon as possible, because the fact that when you start your adventure and you finally encounter that enemy, your units are all level 1. It's just like that Winter Wolf. It's an enemy it's a big deal. It's not very strong, so but it's the fact that you have to sacrifice maybe 1 turn to get rid of it, instead of having to get rid of maybe another demon spawn, shall I say, or maybe a demon hound, should that be out there. But you always have to, you really have to look out for this enemy, especially early on in the game, as they're a problem to put up with. And then of course the infernal sacrifice, that infernal combustion sacrifice that it's capable of doing, but it should never even be next to your unit anyway. You should just look to get rid of them as pronto as possible. And or if it is next to a unit, it's your attack phase. You know what I mean? So, but the other thing, of course, with it being a ranged unit, it's not going to even be anywhere near the other melee combat units, such as the demon spawns and demon hounds. It's going to be pretty far away. So you have to look to get rid of this enemy pronto. Otherwise, he causes a mayhem. Let's hear from Voduke.
Out of all of the enemies in Legends of Kingdom Rush, the FLAREON is the nastiest. Having 2 movement and 4 range means that a FLAREON can reach a unit from a total of 6 hexes away. This wouldn't be so bad if it was just a regular physical attack, but this is a magic damage attack. You lose 1 to 3 HP per attack initially, and because of the burning effect, you lose even more HP regardless of resistances. Even though they don't have as many tricks up their sleeve as a Demon Lord, FLAREONs, like the Winter Wolf, are made way more troublesome by being a type of enemy that spawns more often and in earlier parts of an adventure. You always pay attention to a FLAREON during combat, even if you can't take care of them just yet. Because of their massive effective range, you have to hide away in the corner of the map to take care of other enemies, and then hope that you can deal with the FLAREONs afterwards. They totally change the way you play the game in order to avoid damage from them, and unlike other enemies who do that, the FLAREONs aren't easy to get rid of because you have to keep such a great distance from them. They have a constant presence, and that presence makes a huge difference in all of your gameplay decisions. That to me is an indicator that this is one of the most significant enemies in the entire series, and therefore one of the most troublesome.
All right, that was well said. Number 2 on the list, we have chosen the Yeti. The Yeti, yes. So the Yeti stats, just like the Trollbreaker, 15 hit points, physical attack damage 3 to 5, ranged physical attack damage 3 to 5, armor none, speed, able to move 2 hex spaces. Special abilities called the Yeti Smashy, where it deals 3 to 5 physical damage to the main target, and it's also an area damage to adjacent units. So you, again, just like that Trollbreaker, yeah, it deals a physical damage to the main target, and then it deals the area it deals other damage to the other units 1 hex radius away from the main target. But the other units, the adjacent units, only receive 2 damage less than the main target. It also has, unlike in the original Kingdom Rush, this game it has another ranged attack where it's called the snowball throw, where it can throw a large snowball 3 hex radiuses away, and then it also roots the main target for 1 turn and deals physical damage. It also deals physical damage to main target and to adjacent targets. So I believe, if I'm understanding that correctly, that's doing this snowball attack can deal damage to the main target, and then any target that's any units that are 1 hex radius away from the main target, they get hurt as well. It's obviously, with it being a snow type enemy, it's immune to freezing, and it cannot be knocked back. That's another special ability of with the Yeti. So for sure, this enemy definitely deserves to be on the top 10 list. I mean, folks, it's powerful. 15 hit points. You can't even one shot it. Just like a Trollbreaker, as Voduke mentioned, there's no attack in your arsenal that can one shot a 15 hit point enemy. The fact that it's a ranged enemy, it's just like a Swamp Thing. It's very similar. It does massive physical damage, so it forces you to have to make sure that your units are not clumped together, because then if they are, they're gonna, and the Yeti attacks the main target, they're gonna all get hurt, and he deals pretty significantly high damage of 3 to 5. The snowball attack too forces you to also have to play very smart and methodical with positioning your units, so that they don't all, if maybe your units are clumped, you got to make sure they're not clumped from an X amount of distance away, because the snowball attack that he does can deal damage to the target and the units adjacent to it. So you have to be leery of that. And then on top of that, I'm not so much of a big deal, but it is somewhat of a big deal, is the fact that he cannot be knocked back. Let's say you're in a bad situation, maybe you made some bad moves and you ended up getting your unit cornered. The Yetis happen to corner your units, and it's really not very many spaces to move. If you have maybe a hero that has an ability to, let's say, knock back units, it's not going to work on the Yeti, considering his immense size. You won't be able to knock him back, so you can't create that extra space that's needed that you might need. So with that being said, all of these abilities, it's the fact that this Yeti is durable, it's the fact that he has a range, he's a ranged attack, and just overall he's tricky. It's just real tricky to deal with. It makes it really, he's definitely an annoying enemy. Luckily, I don't remember, I don't believe that they bring many Yetis. I do recall there's one stage where you have to fight 3 Yetis, only just 3 Yetis at once on one particular stage. But that's depending on how the adventure goes. I mean, it's all randomly based on where you go in the mountainous region. But if you do encounter the 3 Yetis, you have to be leery of all these abilities, and they're just tough customers to deal with in general. So for those reasons, that's why we ranked them high on the list at number 2.
Many of the really troublesome enemies in Legends of Kingdom Rush were also a problem in their respective tower defense game. Yetis, however, were pretty much damage sponges that gave a lot of gold in Kingdom Rush 1. Their Legends counterparts are here to completely change their reputation. First of all, being damage sponges actually matters here by a lot. With 15 HP, you can't burst them down easily, and even if you do, they're never alone. So, you're susceptible to attacks from other enemies if you try to take a Yeti down with all of your current turns. Yetis are also immune to being frozen or knocked back, which makes it that much harder to get them out of your hair. Like other thick enemies, they deal heavy area damage and knock back everyone who was hit. But unlike other brute enemies, the Yetis have a ranged attack. They can move before throwing it, which means that they have the freedom to get into range to attack by moving up to 2 spaces, and then have 3 more hexes of range to use the ability. This is an AoE ranged attack that applies the rooted status to the primary target and deals heavy area damage to everyone in the AoE. With only a 2-turn cooldown, a single Yeti can keep your unit locked down half the time while also doing a ton of damage to them. You practically need a tank with high armor to sustain all that damage, but that only works against one Yeti. The Argyle-Ham encounter with 3 Yetis at once is one of the toughest combat encounters in the entire game, and it's because of the onslaught of damage that even just 2 Yetis can cause. You have to hide your fragile units away. There's nothing you can do but tank the ranged attack with a proper tank. But then that tank is out of commission, because they're rooted, or worse, dead from all the damage, meaning that you have to burst the Yetis down as fast as possible. They're truly a force to be reckoned with, and worthy of being one of the most annoying enemies in the entire series.
All right, that was well said. And number 1 that we have chosen as the most annoying enemy in the game is that good old troll chieftain, folks. The drummer boy, as I like to call him. Stats, hit points 12, physical attack damage 3 to 5. His armor is none. Speed, he can move 2 hex spaces. Drum of War is his special ability, as we all know it. He enrages his troll brethren within a 2 hex radius of himself, and these enraged troll brethren's attack damage increases by 1, and they regenerate 1 additional hit point. Also, he has an ability, unlike in original Kingdom Rush, just like the Yeti, in this game that he has a new special ability, and it's that ranged ability he has, which is that avalanche strike, where he lets loose 3 snowballs from the skies to strike random targets. And the last snowball the last snowball that strikes will freeze a unit for 1 turn, and each of the snowballs damage it inflicts 2 damage to every snowball that hits. And also, being a troll, he regenerates 1 hit point per turn. So this enemy, just like in Kingdom Rush Original, there's a reason why producers made it to where he took away 6 lives. In this game, he is just even worse. He's more of a thorn in this game too. 12 hit points. He's very durable. Physical attack damage is impressive. It's 3 to 5, so that's quite a bit of attack damage. Not just very different than not the equivalent, but it's even more in this game than it is in the original Kingdom Rush. He's a lot more powerful, in my opinion, in this game than the original. But also, of course, the Drum of War, you always have to be leery of that. No matter what, you're going to have to deal with that. When there's brethren in his range, they're going to be tougher. He's going to bang the drum. They get tougher. But then not only that, with the trolls as well, should units die within close radius of the trolls themselves, they can get enraged even more. So you got a troll chieftain that can drum the drum and raise the brethren, enhancing their attack strength and their combat capability of the being able to regenerate more hit points, plus the trolls themselves being able to, should a brethren die, they get stronger. All of that adds up, and that's a bad combo with this troll chieftain in the picture. And plus the fact that he has that avalanche strike, that's a ranged attack. So again, like I said in this game, ranged attack enemies are quite annoying in general. They're pretty annoying to put up with. But the fact that this ability can do some decent damage, and then on top of that, freeze a unit where it stalls them from attacking for their turn gets bypassed, you really can't afford to put up with that. And then not only that, this is an enemy that, unlike the Demon Lord, this enemy, he might appear early on. It's an enemy that can appear early on. He's one of those enemies. So with that being said, that makes that troll chieftain a huge problem and a pretty big obstacle to get over with. So for all these reasons, with him being powerful, pretty durable with 12 hit points, in strengthening of his enhancing his brethren's attack capabilities, and then having a ranged attack, that's enough for us. Both me and I, Voduke and I, were able to reason that he would be a number 1 on the top 10 list for Legends of Kingdom Rush annoying enemies. So let's hear from Voduke on this final enemy.
It's wild how strong the Troll Chieftain got in Legends of Kingdom Rush. Despite the many annoying attacks that have been discussed so far, the Chieftain possesses yet another contender for the most annoying ability in the entire game. It's a ranged attack that summons 3 ice spikes dealing 2 damage each, and freezing with the last spike to land. He can distribute these spikes however he wants, which means that he can kill a weaker ranged unit with the first 2 spikes, and then freeze another unit with the 3rd spike. Or he could just distribute the damage in other ways to make sure that units get hurt, making the skill really bothersome to deal with. The worst part is that the chieftain always accompanies other trolls, who don't go down easily. You have to spend multiple attacks to bring these enemies down, which buys him more time to get into range. But even when the chieftain isn't in range to attack your units, he can buff the trolls around him using his drum, giving all of them the enraged bonus instantly. This means that they all heal twice as much per turn, and deal 1 extra damage with each of their attacks, making it harder to kill them, and harder to survive in combat with them. It puts extra pressure on you to isolate the enemies you can pick off quickly enough, but sometimes you have too many enemies to avoid taking damage from all of the attacks coming your way. The chieftain isn't some ultimate enemy who can never be surpassed in power or difficulty. If you put a tank in front of him, you can distract him from his range attacks, as long as the unit has enough durability to endure the high damage of his melee attack. It's an effective way to distract him from using any of his other abilities, but the fact that his abilities are so dangerous that you need to take such drastic measures just to prevent him from using them is proof that the Troll Chieftain has some of the most annoying abilities in the entire game, and in my opinion, makes him the most annoying enemy in all of Legends of Kingdom.
All right. Well, that concludes it, folks. Again, thank you, Voduke, for doing a collab with me. I really appreciate it. Thank you, folks, for watching this video. I know it's a pretty long one, but we really wanted to take the time to break down and give a good analysis on each of the enemies that we felt were worthy of being on the top 10 list, and we did so for that. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you are unfamiliar with the game, it's on Apple currently right now. Hopefully they'll get it on Steam, and you can play it and see for yourself and see how annoying these enemies actually are during gameplay. So hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for more good vids. Ricky, aka the War Champion, along with Voduke. Have a good one, folks. Farewell.